Shelley, who took time out of their busy schedule because they care so much about this topic. We're here to talk about Senate Bill 266 and to publicly ask Governor Stein to veto this bad bill. It's called the Power Bill Reduction Act, but would be better titled the Ratepayer Risks Act. This bill increases financial risks to North Carolinians while shifting money out of residents' pockets and into the coffers of Duke Energy and their largest customers. If it were truly focused on power bill reduction, those advancing it would have moved it forward publicly and on its merits. Instead, it's been quietly buried in a budget bill and disguised in a bill intended for hurricane relief. Sadly, Duke Energy's North Carolina customers have no say in this situation. They can't get their power from any other provider. They're already trying to manage higher bills due to volatile fuel prices, and it will likely get worse as Duke stalls its promised transition to affordable, stable cost, renewable energy, and instead doubles down on dirty fossil fuels. North Carolina's elected leaders should listen to their constituents. Polling from Conservatives for Clean Energy this spring showed voters statewide oppose a key provision in this bill that allows utilities to charge customers for a power plant before it's even supplying energy. Regardless of their political affiliation, 75% of Republicans, 77% of unaffiliated, and 79% of Democrats oppose it. I'd now like to introduce our first speaker, who is a member of the House Energy and Public Utilities Commission, Representative Maria Cervania.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for being here and everybody who's joining us here online. Today I speak plainly of why I strongly oppose SB 266, because it puts utilities and their profits first ahead of North Carolinians and their families. It puts clean energy and climate accountability behind as well. And let's start with the facts and to break down what is in this bill. This bill rolls back our state's commitment to cutting carbon pollution. It removes the 2030 benchmark for reducing emissions. It just wipes it away. We had really great bipartisan support and agreement when we created the bill 951. And at that time, they actually put in a provision that if the utilities couldn't make their emission goals, that the Public Utility Commission actually can work with our utilities to adjust those emission goals. That had been done. They expressed that they couldn't meet 2030 goals, so the PUC said, okay, let's aim for 2034. This bill actually even wipes out that agreement and wipes it out for its goals in perpetuity to 2050. Deadlines matter, and it gave us a clear science-based target when we had the targets in place in 951 to hold the utilities accountable. And without it, progress slows and polluters face no urgency to act. We often hear, if we obliterate all these goals, what puts accountability in place that they won't try to just do everything in 2049? And can you really meet all these goals in 1 year? That would be impossible. So next, another part of this bill is to let utility companies charge you right now for a power plant that hasn't even been finished yet. As Chris Herndon had mentioned, this is called construction work in progress. And it means customers are footing the bill before the lights even come on. So you'll hear, well, you don't have to pay for all of the construction costs, that we negotiated that ratepayers would only pay for the financing. This is still such a significant amount of money. I don't know if everyone knows, this same type of project, the two same type of projects have been in South Carolina with Summer and Vogel in Georgia. And when I speak to my colleagues to find out more information on this, they both delegations have said, my grandchildren's children will have to pay for these projects. And in South Carolina, they're not gonna have a large capacity nuclear reactor, even though it costs billions of dollars. And then in Georgia, they extended it and had an overrun of $14 billion. And they're still not sure when it will be done. This is what proven what could happen to us too here in North Carolina. So we don't want to be fooled. We don't want to have projects that fail or run over budget. Ratepayers will still pay, as I'm saying, and shareholders don't have to take the risk. We do, and generations after us will do too. And it gets worse. The bill also expands the utilities so they can charge you for fuel cost riders, bypassing full rate case oversight. So this was mentioned earlier too. Industry came to the table with utilities to negotiate their cost share. Currently, it's 50% ratepayers, 50% industry. They negotiated with utilities to put the burden on us as ratepayers with a 55% to 45% split. This is gonna cost us millions of dollars. I ask industry and our public utility and public staff, people, my constituents are asking, how much is this gonna cost each one of us? And still, they can't answer that question because we wanna keep the flexibility to be able to overcharge us for the share that is put the burden on us. So what else is here? Families across North Carolina are already seeing spikes. Even $10, $100 could put such a burden on families. That could be between feeding their families or keeping the lights on in their homes. We don't want to do that for our people in North Carolina. And finally, the bill makes it easier for utilities to charge customers for the cost of retiring old coal plants. So here we go, alongside with the emission goals. They're divesting from solar and wind, and last year they put more into nuclear. Now this year, they're even going away from nuclear and putting more commitment to natural gas. Petroleum was testifying and happy that we were going to pass, not me, but our entity was going to pass 266. That should have been suspect to everyone. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a diversified portfolio. We need a little bit of everything, but we made a commitment to close down those coal plants and to divest from natural gas and commit more to solar and wind. And that is not happening. And we're letting the utilities have that permission to go forward with that plan. So let's be very clear. Senate Bill 266 is not about climate progress. It's not about affordable energy. It's about giving monopoly to utilities and more power and more profit to them, while North Carolinians and their families need to pay the price. I believe that clean energy future that can be affordable, accountable, and just. This bill moves us completely in the opposite direction. So that is why I'm respectfully urging Governor Stein to veto SB 266, and why I'm doing everything to communicate to my colleagues to uphold that veto. Thank you so much.
Next up, I'd like to introduce Shelley Robbins, who's the Senior Decarbonization Manager at the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy.
Thank you. I'm Shelley Robbins.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Shelley Robbins, Senior Decarbonization Manager at the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. Residential ratepayers are already coping with increasing utility bills. SB 266 will make our bills worse by abandoning the carbon reduction targets set by this legislature in 2021 in the bipartisan HB 951. This target compels Duke Energy to expand the procurement of low-cost, renewable energy to power the grid. Without this target, Duke will invest more and more in giant, expensive, dirty gas plants such as the ones at Roxborough and Marshall. This bill allows for easier and more frequent rate hikes, and it transfers risk and costs from the monopoly utility onto us. SB 266 is guaranteed to increase utility bills for households and families for the benefit of North Carolina's largest corporations. It's yet another transfer of wealth from ordinary citizens to big corporations and their shareholders. The public staff of the North Carolina Utilities Commission, our ratepayer advocate, estimates that at a minimum, SB 266 will result in $24.8 million in cost shift per year from non-residential customers onto us, residential customers, because of a change in the way purchase power costs are allocated between rate classes. This figure does not reflect recent increases in purchase power, so it's low. An independent study by EQ Research estimates the cost shift to be closer to $87 million per year. So currently, what residential customers consume and what they pay for this purchase power is about equal. But this bill would increase what residential customers pay compared to what they consume, while big corporations would pay less. That cost shift means utility bills for families and low-wage workers will increase, while North Carolina's largest corporations reap the benefits. It will only get worse as natural gas prices continue to rise, as the U.S. gas becomes an international commodity thanks to LNG exports. SB 266 will allow for more frequent fuel cost adjustments and therefore more frequent bill increases. It will make changes to Duke Energy's cost recovery mechanisms and incentivize risky and expensive gas over clean, renewable energy like solar and wind. So it expands the definition of what can be recovered, and it allows for quarterly fuel cost adjustments, which will result in more frequent rate increases. But now, why would they want that? Because they know that gas prices are only going up, and they want to pass them along to us as fast as they can. An Environmental Defense Fund analysis last year showed that rising gas prices are the primary cause of rate increases over the last 7 years. Almost 70% of the bill increases in Duke Energy Carolinas and almost 50% in Duke Energy Progress, far larger than any other single factor. The bill will erode ratepayer protections. It will allow Duke Energy to exceed the current $500 million cap on new generation that can be included in rates outside of the normal rate-making process. And this cap was set to protect ratepayers. But now we will be forced to pay for dirty gas peaker plants even when they are not yet operational, exposing residential ratepayers to additional risks and costs. And this bill will change how Duke Energy is allowed to cover construction financing costs. It will allow shortcuts in getting approval to pass costs along, putting residential ratepayers on the hook to cover the cost of building risky polluting power plants and nuclear plants, even if they never go into operation. And I'll just make a note that those gas plants up at Roxborough are already going to cost billions with a B. So those financing costs are significant. So now I'll hand off to Shannon, founder and executive director of Sustain Charlotte. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, just stay close.
Stay close.
Hi, my name is Shannon, and I'm here on behalf of tens of thousands of Charlotte area families who open their power bills each month and wonder how much higher will it be than the month before. Our region is already facing a 14.6% rate hike over the next 3 years, with the first 8% chunk already baked into bills this winter. By 2026, the typical household will pay almost $20 more every month, money that could buy groceries, prescriptions, or school supplies instead of paying off Duke's balance. Senate Bill 266 tells those same families, get ready to pay even sooner. The bill lets Duke Energy charge us for construction work in progress, as others have said, before a single watt of electricity is delivered. This pay first, hope for power later financing puts all the risk on customers while guaranteeing profits for shareholders. Let's look at what pay first, hope for power later has meant in other states. Again, ratepayers in South Carolina are still shelling out about $8 every month for the VC Summer nuclear expansion, a project that was abandoned in 2017 after $9 billion had already been spent. They will keep paying for years without a single kilowatt to show for it. Down in Georgia, after more than a decade of delays and ballooning costs that have topped $35 billion, Georgia Power customers face a 10% bill increase, roughly $14 extra every month for the average home, just to cover the utility's capital charges for their Vogtle plant project. Next, let's look at Mississippi. In Mississippi, state regulators approved a rate hike of up to $16 per month for customers to finance the Kemper coal plant while it was still under construction. The plant was never delivered on its promises, and much of its original design was abandoned. This pattern is painfully clear. Construction while in progress shifts multi-billion-dollar gambles from Wall Street to Main Street. When projects go over budget or never produce power, families and small businesses keep writing checks long after the ribbon-cutting parties have been canceled. Governor Stein, Charlotte area residents and North Carolinians across this state are already paying more for electricity, breathing dirtier air, and shouldering the risk of extreme weather outages. Senate Bill 266 would hit them with financing charges up front, slow our progress toward clean energy, and break the promise Duke Energy made to our state in 2021. I respectfully urge you to veto Senate Bill 266. Let's protect household budgets, keep our clean energy commitments, and ensure that North Carolina never becomes the next cautionary tale in the long, expensive history of pay now, hope for power later boondoggles. Now I'd like to pass this off to my colleague Jeff Robbins of CleanAIRE North Carolina to explain more about how this bill was shoved through the legislative process despite all the harm it would do to ratepayers and all North Carolinians.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jeff Robbins, Executive Director at CleanAIRE NC. We fight for clean air and collaborative solutions for the environment. Now, SB 266 is the culmination of a series of bills that all sought to saddle Duke Energy customers with the cost of construction works in progress while allowing Duke Energy to back out of its pledge to lower emissions by 2030. Duke Energy made promise in 2021 to reduce carbon emissions by 70% over 2005 levels by 2030. In return for that promise, the utility got an easier path to raise rates. This agreement won bipartisan support from the General Assembly and the governor and won praise for North Carolina as a climate change leader in the Southeast. Duke wants to backtrack on its part of the bargain while not only keeping its rate increase glide path, but by adding additional ways to raise rates outside of the standard process. This monopoly utility has demonstrated that its promises can't be trusted. Eliminating this important decarbonization target means electric bills will increase as utilities rely on the volatile natural gas market instead of cheaper and more reliable solar power. Two prior versions of this bill stalled out in the House, so this version has been cloaked in the veneer of a Power Bill Reduction Act, even though it stands to do the opposite. SB 266 is the worst version of this bill because, as speakers before me have explained, it shifts additional financial risks and burdens away from commercial customers and onto residential customers. It was rushed through the legislature. SB 266 originally was a bill that helped Hurricane Helene victims rebuild their homes and businesses. It was gutted before a House committee hearing, but members of that committee got the substitute language only the night before. And constituents who attended the hearing saw the language just minutes ahead of the vote. Now it stands to hurt North Carolinians statewide who have no choice about which utility provides their electricity due to the monopoly and who will see no benefit from reduced carbon emissions. Duke Energy plans to build several new natural gas power plants and received approval for significant new natural gas capacity. By example, an 8,925 megawatt of new combined cycle and combustion turbine natural gas facilities in one proposed scenario. Even after transitioning from coal, new natural gas plants will still emit thousands of tons of other harmful air pollutants annually, including nitrogen oxides, fine particulate matter, sulfur dioxide, carbon monoxide, and volatile organic compounds. These pollutants all contribute to smog, respiratory issues, and other public health problems that my organization fights for. CleanAIRE NC is urging Governor Josh Stein to veto this bill, but we also know that this veto will face a challenge. That's why our Charlotte-Mecklenburg climate leader, CMCL group, is putting pressure on the elected state lawmakers who failed to oppose SB 266 when it was rushed through the legislative process. We know from polling by Conservatives for Clean Energy that North Carolina voters of all political stripes overwhelmingly oppose this legislation. We encourage you to contact your state lawmakers. Tell them to oppose Governor Stein's veto, and we urge our elected leaders to listen to the people that they serve. I'm now going to hand off to Jeff Monico to share thoughts from Eastern North Carolina. Jeff leads the Sierra Club's Cypress group, which supports clean energy expansion and environmental protection in 19 counties from Goldsboro and Greenville up to the state's northeastern corner.
Thank you, Jeff. Close it. Close
Right
it.
up on it.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Monico. As Jeff just said, I am chair of the Cypress group of the Sierra Club, which has more than 1,600 members and supporters in Eastern North Carolina. I want to tell you what Cypress group members in Eastern North Carolina are noticing going on in Raleigh. We see the NC House and Senate passing bills to support the anti-environment, anti-working class goals of the Trump administration. These include reducing environmental protections, resisting renewable energy, and moving financial wealth from working class people to the top 10 percenters. And Bill S266 is an example of this. Many of us in Eastern North Carolina are not happy with what appears to be the North Carolina House's and Senate's abandonment of both environmental protections and compassion for working people. We, especially my generation, worked very hard to put these protections in place for ourselves and, importantly, for future generations. We in Eastern North Carolina love our environment. That's why we oppose S266. We love our rivers, our sounds, the forests, the farm fields, the birds, the salt marshes, the live oak trees, and the sea turtles. We love fishing and swimming in the Tar River and Pamlico Sound. We love kayaking and boating on the Roanoke River and Albemarle Sounds. And of course, we love everything about our wonderful Outer Banks. And we hate any thought of putting any of this at risk. So it is with great sadness and despair that I read the details of Bill S266, the Ratepayers Risk Act. The bill puts at risk So much of what Sierra Club Cypress Group members love about Eastern North Carolina and love about our people. North Carolina legislators, you often say we need well-paying jobs and good industries in Eastern North Carolina. To that I say, yes, I agree. I also say, North Carolina has long been a leader in development of good jobs, such as in renewable energy, which provides steady employment and economic success to countless North Carolinians. Cypress Group volunteers have often spoken up to support development of solar energy in our region. We are also proud of our jobs that operate 2 onshore wind farms, one of which was the very first onshore wind development in the Southeast. These wind farms have been a financial boon to the counties that host them. So, I agree with creating good jobs, but I don't agree with our legislature when its leaders create a bill like S266 that contradicts and even reverses best policies that have helped generate a strong economy and good jobs while also preserving a clean and healthy environment and protecting working ratepayers. The people in North Carolina know better. They know better legislation is possible. And North Carolina has a track record to prove it, as I just mentioned with the green energy. North Carolina ratepayers can have a clean environment and affordable clean electricity without personally underwriting the financial risks of Duke's construction projects. Don't tell us we can't. We don't believe you. We've seen proof that yes, you can, North Carolina can, and the legislature can pass bills that can do that. Governor Stein, please veto this short-sighted bill. And to our elected state lawmakers, please uphold that veto. I'm now going to hand off to another Sierra Club volunteer to speak about how this legislation affects ratepayers in another of our population centers. Please join me in welcoming Beverly Bard, who drove in from High Point to speak to this important issue.
Good afternoon. My name is Beverly Bard, and I'm a resident of High Point, North Carolina, a voter in House District 60. I've lived here for over 24 years, and I came here this morning to voice my concern and opposition to Senate Bill 266. As a resident of High Point and a voter, I believe that North Carolina deserves clean energy. I'm deeply concerned about this bill harming our progress to that goal. When I learned about Senate Bill 266, I was shocked to see that our legislatures had proposed cutting Duke Energy's 2030 climate reduction target. I've been a lifelong proponent of renewed energy sources, and I, like many climate-conscious North Carolinians, have faced challenges in getting solar panels installed in my property. Our hopes have always been in our state government ensuring that our public utilities pursue responsible renewable energy goals to reduce carbon emissions in our state. My husband and I are both retirees living on a fixed income. Adding extra cost is something that my North Carolina residents, like ourselves, cannot easily adjust for. I have friends here in that position, for especially people who are obligated to get their electricity from a monopoly utility. This bill would allow Duke Energy to shift additional costs to residential ratepayers, such as myself, and also saddle us with surcharges to pay for Duke Energy's construction costs. I don't think it's fair for a multi-billion-dollar monopoly to saddle ordinary ratepayers with additional costs up front, with no guarantee of delivering any functioning power plants, no guarantee that those power sources will be renewable, and no way for us to get our money back if they fail to uphold their end of the deal. It isn't right for our legislatures to favor a company like Duke Energy at the expense of ordinary citizens. Duke Energy should be asking its shareholders for the money to build plants that they will profit from, not residential ratepayers. I voted for Cecil Brockman as my state representative but I'm now dismayed to see that he was absent when this bill passed the full House. We need our elected leaders to stand up for us. I'm proud to have voted for Josh Stein as my governor, and I'm calling upon him to veto Senate Bill 266. I ask Representative Brockman and all our elected state lawmakers to support that veto by voting against any override attempt. This bill is a bad deal for all North Carolinians and will not serve to profit Duke Energy at the expense of people like me.
Thank you so much, Beverly. Thank you to all of our speakers here today. In summary, Senate Bill 266 was originally a bill meant to help people in Western North Carolina recover from Hurricane Helene. Now it will hurt people across North Carolina by attacking their bank accounts and the environment. North Carolina Sierra Club has an action alert right now asking Governor Stein to veto the bill, and we encourage people to participate by visiting sc.org/NC. Our partner organizations today and others also have action alerts, so we encourage you to participate in those as you follow them. And that concludes today's event. Thank you very much.